In World War II, one aircraft did more than fight for survival, it defined victory. The F6F Hellcat was more than a machine. It was the U.S. Navy's iron fist in the Pacific. It's built to outclimb, outfight, and outlast anything Japan could put in the air. From factory blueprints to burning dogfights, it was the plane that turned inexperienced pilots into aces. Long before the Pacific became a battlefield, Grumman engineers were already working on a secret project that would change naval aviation forever. Driven by the harsh reality that the existing Wildcat, though courageous, was slow to climb, difficult to land, and instantly outclassed when the Zero appeared. Pilots returning from early combat were brutally clear in their demands. More power, wider landing gear, better visibility, and a cockpit that didn't feel like a coffin. At Grumman's Long Island Iron Works, those demands were etched directly into the blueprints as co-founder Jake Swerble. Chief Engineer William Schwendler and test pilot Bob Hall set out not to build another fighter, but the fighter one designed around pilot survival. Heavy spars, thick armor, and a forgiving wing meant mistakes were survivable. Because the Hellcat was never meant to be elegant, only tough, with every inch reflecting a single philosophy: practicality over perfection. The Navy's message was simple: get us upstairs faster, and it echoed all the way to President Roosevelt himself as pressure mounted in 1942 while the Pacific situation worsened. Racing against time and the enemy, Grumman achieved the nearly impossible. Taking the F6F from drawing board to carrier deck in just 14 months, the result wasn't sleek or glamorous, but it was exactly what pilots had asked for: fast, strong, stable, and lethal. As one aviator famously said, "You don't fall in love with a Hellcat, you trust it." And soon that trust would be tested in skies filled with fire. If its creation was remarkable, what happened next, when one engine transformed it from a capable fighter into an unstoppable weapon, would cement its legend. Its original Wright R2600 engine simply couldn't give the Hellcat the muscle it needed to climb or fight effectively. The aircraft required power capable of lifting not just its weight, but the Navy's hopes. That power arrived in the form of the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, a proven monster already driving the Corsair and the P-47 Thunderbolt, and the transformation was immediate. With 2,000 horsepower, the Hellcat gained brutal strength and the agility to use it. A change proven on July 30th when test pilot Bob Hall sent the aircraft skyward and found it climbing like a rocket and diving like a hammer, only for the engine to fail on the next flight, forcing a violent crash landing that Hall survived, battered but alive, a living testament to the Hellcat's toughness. With the R2800 installed, the F6F wasn't just faster, it was fearless. Its two-stage supercharger let it breathe at altitudes where Japanese Zeros suffocated. And above 20,000 feet, the Hellcat dominated, turning dives into death sentences. Air cooling meant it could absorb gunfire, leak oil, and still limp home. A rare mercy in the Pacific's unforgiving skies. Pilots called the R2800 the sound of survival. Mechanics called it the engine that wouldn't quit. And that trust became the foundation for something greater. Because Grumman didn't just build power, they built endurance around it. Designed like a flying tank, the Hellcat followed one ruthless rule: overbuild everything. Its wings were anchored by massive dual spars rated far beyond Navy requirements, flexing but never failing during brutal carrier landings. Its fuselage was a fortress of aluminum ribs and armor, with nearly 200 pounds of cockpit protection, a bulletproof windshield, and self-sealing fuel tanks that closed when hit, allowing aircraft riddled with holes to taxi back under their own power. The wide, hydraulically actuated landing gear replaced the Wildcat's hand-cranked system, giving the Hellcat unmatched stability on pitching decks, while manual backups, emergency air bottles, and simple, robust hydraulics ensured pilots survived even when systems failed. This wasn't elegance or speed for its own sake, it was engineering for forgiveness. A fighter that could absorb damage, pilot error, and sheer brutality and still keep flying. Ruggedness alone didn't make the Hellcat legendary, but when that toughness met combat, it became unstoppable. When it met the Zero head-on, it changed the balance of power in the Pacific forever. The Hellcat entered the war quietly, but it didn't stay quiet for long. Its first combat mission came on August 31st, 1943, during the Marcus Island raid. And within a day, it scored its first confirmed Kila Japanese H-8K Emily flying boat torn apart by its .50 caliber guns. That was the start of a new era in naval air warfare. From that moment, the Hellcat proved itself not as an experiment, but as a phenomenon over Rabuel, Tarawa, and the Marshall Islands. It dominated the skies. Pilots who had once struggled in fragile Wildcats now led offensives with confidence. It's climbing faster, diving harder, and returning home even when their aircraft looked like Swiss cheese. The statistics were staggering in its first 6 months. Hellcats destroyed hundreds of Japanese planes while suffering only a fraction of those losses. The Japanese Zero, once feared across the Pacific, was suddenly outmatched. The Hellcat's armor absorbed hits that would have destroyed lesser planes, and its heavy guns shredded lightweight Japanese fighters before they could even get within range. It wasn't just firepower, it was morale. For the first time, American pilots felt the tide turning. They trusted their machine and believed in victory. Mechanics called it the Iron Cat. Pilots called it the Ace Maker, a nickname it earned. By late 1943, 3 out of every 4 Navy aerial victories in the Pacific came from a Hellcat's guns. It wasn't just winning battles, it was rewriting air warfare itself. Its defining moment came on June 19, 1944, above the Philippine Sea. Japan launched over 400 aircraft in a desperate attempt to halt the advancing U.S. fleet, but hundreds of Hellcats were waiting. Guided by radar and circling in tight formations like hawks, as the first Japanese wave appeared, Navy controllers vectored squadrons toward them. And what followed became the most one-sided air battle of the war. Hellcats dove from the sun, tearing through Zeros and Judy bombers within minutes. Smoke and falling wreckage filled the skies, and pilots would later call it a turkey shoot, a grim name that endured for generations. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, by the end of the day. Over 350 Japanese aircraft had been destroyed. 2 days later, the number approached 600, Japan's elite carrier air wings. Its best-trained aviators were gone. The nation's air power had been shattered in a single engagement, while U.S. losses were minimal. Hellcats returned home riddled with bullet holes and missing chunks of wing, yet still landed safely. That battle didn't just prove superiority, it ended an era. The Zero, once the symbol of Japanese dominance, had finally met its match. From that day forward, Japan would never again contest the Pacific skies on equal footing. The F6F Hellcat had become more than a fighter. It was a steel wall shielding the fleet, the reason Japanese carriers would no longer threaten American dominance. But even with victory in sight, darker challenge loomed, one that no amount of armor or skill could fully prepare pilots for: the era of Kamiga. By the war's end, the Hellcat had done what no other naval fighter achieved. It recorded a staggering kill ratio of 19-1, destroying over 5,000 enemy aircraft while losing only 270 in air-to-air combat, statistic that cemented its place as the most successful naval fighter ever built. It wasn't designed for glamour, but for reliability. Pilots called it the plane that forgave mistakes, turning nervous rookies into confident aces. More than 300 U.S. Navy pilots became aces flying Hellcats, each with 5 or more confirmed kills. Commander David McCampbell led them all with 34 victories. 9 of them in a single mission, a record that still stands. The Hellcat fought across the Pacific, from the Gilberts to Okinawa, escorting bombers, intercepting raids, and striking ships. Its versatility made it indispensable, capable of carrying rockets, bombs, and even experimental radar, evolving into night fighters that hunted enemies in total darkness. When the war ended, it wasn't retired quietly. It was celebrated as the aircraft that won the Pacific. Its legacy endured, shaping every U.S. Navy fighter that followed. The F-8F, Bearcat, F-9F Panther, and even the iconic F-14 Tomcat carried its DNA. For decades, pilots spoke of the Hellcat with reverence. It wasn't the prettiest aircraft, but it was the one that always came home. The Hellcat's roar may have faded from the skies, but its story never did. It stands as a testament to what happens when engineering meets necessity and courage meets steel. Wars aren't won by perfect machines, they're won by the ones that endure. And in the Pacific, no aircraft endured like the F6F Hellcat. Built to survive, to fight, and to win. Its rugged frame and roaring engine carried the Navy through the toughest battles of the Pacific without ever losing its spirit. Its story is one of grit, innovation, and victory against the odds. Keep watching Vintage Planes for more untold stories that shaped the machines and heroes of history.